So I want to start with something that happened to me this morning at the coffee shop.
Okay.
Totally standard stuff. I'm walking in, guy in front of me holds the door. I do the little nod, say thanks. He says, yep. And as I'm waiting, I started thinking about that whole interaction. We usually just call that manners, right? Or just
Yeah.
politeness.
Social lubricant is the term sociologists usually throw around.
Yeah, exactly. The grease that keeps the gears from grinding is basically just us agreeing to be nice so we don't, kill each other over a caffeine fix.
Yeah.
But then I picked up the source material for this deep dive, and honestly, it made me feel like I've been looking at the world completely upside down. Because this text,
Yeah.
it doesn't care about nice.
Not even a little bit. No.
It argues that our entire definition is just wrong. It claims manners aren't about etiquette or being a gentleman or a lady or any of that. It says that manners are actually a linguistic control architecture.
It's a pretty radical shift in perspective. I mean, we're moving from mismanners to systems engineering.
Yeah.
The source text, manners as the architecture of social, signal, and synchrony. It basically treats humans like networked computers. It argues that manners are the TCP/IP protocol of the human race.
See, that sounds incredibly cool to me. It sounds like we're just meat robots programmed to say please, but the deeper I got, the more I realized that cold might actually be the entire point.
Hmm.
So the mission of this deep dive is to unpack this idea that manners are an early-stage training interface designed to calibrate us to the operational grammar of relational language.
It's dense terminology for sure, but the concept is so vital. Think about it this way. Before you can have a messy, emotional human conversation, before you can debate politics or fall in love,
Yeah.
you need a stable connection.
A clean line?
You need a clean line. And manners are the software that establishes that line.
Okay, so if manners are the operating system, let's talk about the installation process. The source starts with this really fascinating observation about childhood. It points out a distinction that I think we just ignore. Behavior precedes comprehension. We teach kids to use the software before they even have a clue what the software does.
This is the wax-on, wax-off phase of human development.
Right. We don't sit a 2-year-old down and explain the philosophy of gratitude or the social contract before telling them to say thank you. We just drill it, say thank you to grandma. It's a command.
And that's where people get hung up. They think, well, if the kid doesn't feel grateful, isn't forcing them to say thank you, just teaching them to lie.
Yeah, I've had that thought.
But the source argues that sincerity it's irrelevant at this stage. The goal isn't emotional expression. The goal is synchronization.
Synchronization.
Yes, you are installing a pattern. You're training the child to recognize that an input grandma gives, a cookie, requires a specific output.
Child says thank you.
It's an if-then statement. It's code.
But isn't that fake? I mean, if we're just running scripts on each other, where's the authenticity in all this?
Authenticity needs a platform to stand on. You can't be authentic if you can't even connect. The source calls this the installation of awareness. When you force that toddler to stop, look at grandma, and speak a specific phrase, you aren't teaching gratitude yet. You are installing procedural awareness of relational positioning.
Okay, let's de-jargon that. Relational positioning, what is that?
It means forcing the child to realize, I am not the only thing in the universe.
Which is a very hard lesson for a toddler.
It's a hard lesson for a lot of adults. The default state of the human brain is self-reference. I am hungry, I want, I feel. Manners are the very first disruption of that loop.
They force the system to acknowledge an external agent.
Exactly. It shifts the perspective from self to system.
So the pause that's required to say please is actually more important than the word itself.
The pause is everything. I mean it. That pause is the moment the brain switches from, say, impulse mode to interaction mode.
Okay, so we've installed the basic OS. The kid knows the drills, but the source material breaks this down into 3 specific structural purposes. And this is where it stops being about toddlers and starts being about how civilization functions.
Or fails to function.
Right. The first one is signal standardization.
Okay, and to get why this matters, don't think about a coffee shop. Think about aviation.
All right, I'm in the cockpit.
When a pilot talks to air traffic control, they don't say, hey man, how's it going? I was thinking about maybe landing on runway 4 if that's cool with you.
No, that would be terrifying. They'd say, requesting clearance, runway 4 left.
And the tower says, Roger, or Wilco, standardized term, short, predictable. Why? Because ambiguity kills. In a high-stakes environment, you cannot afford to have the other person misinterpret your vibe.
You need a signal that means the exact same thing to everyone.
regardless of how they feel that day. So, bringing that back to everyday life manners are our version of Roger and Wilco.
Is that what we're saying?
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
The source argues manners create predictable linguistic markers. And this is crucial when we are dealing with what the text calls agents who do not yet share deep mutual modeling.
Which is a very fancy way of saying strangers.
But specifically strangers, you can't predict. If I've been married to you for 20 years, I don't need manners to know if you're angry. I can tell by how your left eyebrow twitches.
I know that twitch.
But if I meet you on the subway or in a boardroom negotiation, I have zero data on you. I don't know if you're crazy, aggressive, smart, anything.
So I send a ping. I hold the door. Or I say, excuse me.
And if you return the ping, if you say thanks,
Yeah.
we have established a baseline. We have, like, shaken hands digitally. We've proven we're both running the same protocol. Okay, this person follows the rules. They are safe. Cooperative.
It's a Bluetooth handshake.
It is. And think about how unsettling it is when that handshake fails. You hold the door for someone and they just walk through, stare straight ahead, say nothing.
Oh, I hate that. It's visceral. You instantly feel that threatened isn't quite the right word, but alert.
Alert is the perfect word. Your brain goes, error, protocol mismatch, and suddenly your cognitive load spikes. You have to watch that person now. Are they hostile? Are they just oblivious? You have to process them manually because the automatic handshake failed.
That's a really good point. Manners lower the CPU usage of the brain. If everyone follows the script, I can relax. If they go off script, I have to be hypervigilant.
Which brings us to the second structural purpose. We've established the connection, but now we need to know how to navigate it. The source calls this role encoding.
And it uses this term I absolutely love, relational geometry. It sounds like we're doing math with people.
In a way, we are. Every conversation has a shape. There is a geometry to it. Who's the speaker? Who's the listener? Who has authority? Who's asking for a favor and who's granting it?
Right.
Manners aren't just being nice. They are the map coordinates for where you stand in that geometry.
It reminds me of the nightmare of the Zoom era. You know when you're on a call with a slight lag and all the manners just fall apart?
The no, you go loop.
It's excruciating. And it's because the relational geometry has collapsed. We can't see the cues. The source mentions things like authority gradients and reciprocity expectations. In a physical room, manners help us manage all that traffic.
Think about the phrase, may I interrupt?
Which nobody uses anymore, but yeah, sure.
But look at the mechanics of it. That phrase acknowledges the geometry. It says, you are currently the transmitter. I am the receiver. I wish to invert those roles. Do I have permission?
It's a request to change the traffic flow.
And without that marker, you just have two people shouting over each other.
The source calls this cooperative sequencing, which is basically turn-taking. But it implies that without manners, we aren't actually having a conversation. We're just broadcasting simultaneously.
That's that context over self shift again. If I am operating purely from my own ego, my own self-reference, I speak whenever I have a thought. Doesn't matter if you're talking. My thought exists, so it must be voiced.
Right.
Manners force me to look at the map and say, oh, hang on, the lane isn't clear.
It's funny you mentioned the ego thing, because that leads perfectly into the third purpose, which I think is the most challenging one for our culture today. Channel discipline.
This is the big one.
The source defines this as the capacity to constrain impulsive output. And I feel like that is the exact opposite of what social media trains us to do. Social media says, express yourself immediately, loudly.
And this source is saying, no, shut up until you can regulate your timing.
It's inhibitory control.
It is. And it's not about repression in a negative sense. It's about signal fidelity. Imagine a fire hose. If you just turn it on full blast, the water goes everywhere. It's a mess. You can't aim it. Channel discipline is the nozzle. It restricts the flow so you can actually hit the target.
The text mentions this builds the capacity for layered dialogue. Can you unpack that? What does layered even mean here?
Well, think about a really sophisticated interaction, maybe a subtle flirtation or a very tense diplomatic negotiation, or even just telling a joke.
A joke is a good example. Timing is everything.
Right. If you blurt out the punchline because you're too excited, the joke dies. If you are in a negotiation and you react immediately to an insult with anger, you lose your leverage. Layered dialogue requires you to hold back.
You have to suppress the immediate impulse.
You have to suppress the impulse to scream or laugh or cry so that you can deliver a message that has nuance.
So meaning depends on the control of delivery, not just the content.
Absolutely. You can say, I'm fine, in 20 different ways. But to choose the exact version of I'm fine that conveys I'm actually hurt, but I don't want to talk about it right now, you need channel discipline. You need to be able to modulate your tone, your volume, your timing.
That makes so much sense. If you have no manners, if you have no filter, you're just a raw data dump. You're just noise.
Your low bandwidth. And that's the killer insight of this source. We think of rude people as just being unpleasant, but really they're low bandwidth communicators. They can only transmit simple, loud signals. I am angry. I want this.
They can't transmit complex, subtle data.
Because they lack the architecture to shape the signal.
This brings us to the so what of the deep dive. We're adults. We know we should say please and thank you. We know we shouldn't interrupt. But we're seeing a world where this architecture is, well, it's crumbling. The source argues that we keep manners not out of rule obedience, but because of visible utility.
Coordination efficiency and interpretive clarity. Those are the terms the text uses.
Let's translate that. Coordination efficiency sounds like corporate speak.
Think about a team meeting. If everyone observes the protocol waiting turns, acknowledging points, dissenting respectfully, that meeting takes 30 minutes. Problem solved.
And if they don't?
If everyone interrupts, talks over each other, ignores the hierarchy, that meeting takes 3 hours and nothing gets solved. That is coordination inefficiency. Manners are basically a productivity hack.
And interpretive clarity. That goes back to the trust issue we touched on earlier.
Right. Reduce conflict noise.
This is huge. How many arguments have you had where you weren't actually fighting about the topic, you were fighting about the tone?
Don't talk to me like that. Exactly. It's not what you said, it's how you said it. That is conflict noise. It's static on the line. Manners act like noise-canceling headphones. They strip out the aggression markers so we can actually hear the data.
So the ultimate goal, and the source puts this in bold, is access to higher bandwidth interaction.
That is the payoff. Why do we go through all the trouble of teaching kids to sit still? Why do we hold our tongues in meetings? Because when the channel is disciplined, the roles are encoded, and the signals are standardized, we can do magic. We can transfer massive, complex concepts from my brain to yours without loss.
It's the difference between a telegraph and fiber optics.
A telegraph is fine for SOS, but if you want to explain the nuance of a heartbreak or a complex architectural theory or a political compromise, you need fiber optics. You need high bandwidth.
And manners are the infrastructure that carries that cable.
That's
This creates a really weird paradox, though, because we usually associate polite society with being superficial. We think the people with the perfect manners are the ones hiding something. But this argument suggests that without the manners, you can't actually reveal anything deep.
That's the irony. We think raw means real. But raw communication is usually just noise. It's just impulse. To be truly understood, deeply understood, you have to shape the signal.
I want to apply this to the modern landscape before we wrap up, because if you look at the internet,
Oh boy.
the internet is basically a manners-free zone. It's a low-protocol environment. And looking at it through this lens, it explains so much.
It explains everything. Why is internet discourse so stupid? I don't mean the people are stupid. I mean the discourse itself is stupid. It's binary, black and white, aggressive. Why? Because the protocol is missing.
There's no signal standardization. I don't know if you're joking or threatening me.
There's no relational geometry. A Nobel Prize winner and a bot look exactly the same in a comment thread. There's no hierarchy of expertise.
And definitely no channel discipline. It's pure impulse.
So what happens? The bandwidth collapses. You can only transmit the simplest, most aggressive signals. You can't have a nuanced debate about tax policy on X, because the architecture cannot support the weight of the signal.
That is actually kind of terrifying. It suggests that we aren't getting meaner. We're just using a system that forbids complexity.
We are trying to run sophisticated software on broken hardware, and then we wonder why it keeps glitching.
So to bring it all home, we started this deep dive thinking about holding doors. We've ended up realizing that manners are basically the source code for collective intelligence.
It's the sysadmin work of being human.
So if you are listening to this, the next time you find yourself getting annoyed that you have to write a polite email or wait for someone to finish a boring story,
Don't think of it as being nice. Think of it as system maintenance. You are keeping the network online. You are verifying the protocol.
And the people who don't do it, the people who cut in line, who interrupt, who don't say thanks.
They aren't rebels. They're just incompatible. They're running a corrupted file.
Or they're just stuck on dial-up in a 5G world.
And sadly, that means they will never really be heard. Not fully.
I want to leave you with a thought that has been nagging me since I finished this reading. We talked about high bandwidth,
Yes.
If manners are the architecture required for high bandwidth interaction, if they are the only thing that keeps the noise low enough for us to understand each other, then we have to ask, what happens if we let them erode too far?
That's the million-dollar question.
Does the modern erosion of manners literally degrade the intelligence of our species?
I would argue yes.
That's a heavy yes.
Think about it. If we lose the ability to sit through discomfort, to listen without interrupting, to standardize our signals, we lose the ability to solve hard problems together. We become a room full of screaming toddlers.
And toddlers don't build skyscrapers.
They don't cure diseases, they just break toys.
So manners aren't just about not being rude. They're about preserving the capacity for human genius.
Preserving the signal in a world full of noise.
That is a lot to think about the next time you say bless you. Thanks for taking the dive with us. We'll see you next time.
Safe travel.